They called it the red silence because it didn't roar. It didn't scream. It just ate. Still, flesh, polymer. Didn't matter. The moment the spires cracked and the growths began rising out of the ground like slow-mashing geysers, we knew this place wasn't going to be tamed. The last transport lifted off 30 minutes ago. I watched it shrink into the dusty atmosphere while the horizon glowed like a cauterized wound. There were 6 of us left. They gave us the option to leave. Hell, we were ordered to, but orders don't carry much weight when you're staring down a planet trying to unmake itself. And the only people who can stop it are the ones left behind. So we made our choice. The last official broadcast from Quarters 4 was mine. VVAC complete. This colony is declared lost. 6 personnel remaining for containment op. Expect no survivors. Message ends. I didn't sign it. We weren't looking for medals. If we pulled this off, someone else could write the history books. Our suits were already patched with foam sealant, rust creeping up the leg plates. The biomass corrodes in layers and gets smarter every time you burn it. Mason, our bioweapons expert, rigged a pack of aerosol spicers on his back. Looks like a busted leaf blower. Works like a goddamn miracle when it... We moved toward the scar zone at sunrise. The red wind carried spores like glowing snowflakes, silent and swirling. You can't breathe the air anymore. And if it touches bare skin, it roots. I asked Clara, our field geneticist, if we could fix it. The planet, I mean. She didn't look up from her scanner, just said, we're not fixing it, we're out-evolving it. And that was the plan. We weren't survivors, we were going to war. The first kilometer was manageable, at least by red silence standards. The spores hadn't fully claimed the flatlands yet, just a fine red fuzz across the dust, like mold on old bread. It crunched under our boots, and each step left glowing prints that pulsed for a few seconds before fading back to inert crimson. We kept the line tight. I took point, Mason was rear guard, Clara and Singh, our biomech and comms tech, flanked center with the forge sled in tow. The forge looked like a sleek coffin strapped to a grav sled, and inside, everything that could save or kill a planet. We called it Prometheus. By hour 2, the flatlands gave way to a bloom field. Blooms were where the silence got loud, not audibly, but visually. Like a painter took a blowtorch to a coral reef. Towers of hardened spore glass twisted into the sky. Some pulsed with inner light, others seemed dead but hissed when you passed too close. We moved slowly, machetes out, not for cutting but probing. The glass blooms sometimes hid filament traps. Singh found one. His left gauntlet melted before Clara's foam grenade sealed the wound. I've got spares, he grunted, flexing the blackened stub. Hands overrated anyway. Mason started splicing, then and there. We needed spores from this bloom field. He sprayed a siphon dome over one of the towers, then jabbed a sampler through the resin. The sample hissed like a snake. He grinned under his visor. This one's got teeth. That's promising. Prometheus word to life, analyzing. The UI fed into Clara's visor, lighting her face and shifting data. It's learning. These strains are communicating. There's pattern recognition across cells, almost like immune response behavior. I nodded. Then we gave it something to fight. Behind us, the field shimmered red in the wind. Ahead, more towers rose, like a skyline built by nightmares. We moved forward, and the planet watched. We lost a drone scout before we even knew it was being hunted. Clara had programmed it to hover 100 meters ahead. Lightweight, quiet, loaded with LiDAR and thermal. It pinged normally for about 5 minutes, then vanished from the IUD. No warning, just silence. 1 second it was there, the next gone. We raised my fist, halt. Everyone froze. Mason adjusted his grip on the plasma cutter, muttering, something smart's out there, or hungry, or both. We moved slow, deliberate. Clara recalibrated the motion sensors and threw up a directional EM pulse. It painted the field with low-frequency ping. Nothing responded. That made it worse. Then Singh saw it. 12 o'clock. Movement, low to the ground. It slithered, not like a snake. Too segmented. Too fast. The thing looked like a stack of spine plates and veins skimming over the red dust without disturbing it. The silence wasn't just atmospheric, it was part of it. Wherever it went, sound died. I barely got a shot off before it launched itself. The mass hit Renner square in the chest. Our medic slammed into the ground with a metallic grunt. Her auto-injectors were already firing as the thing tried to fuse with her armor. The nanosealant foamed, but the silence adapted. It chewed through the plating like acid, whipping tendrils inside like wires seeking power. Mason didn't hesitate. He blasted it point blank with the cutter, the air filled with a screech that wasn't sound. More like pressure inside your skull twisting. We all staggered, but Renner ripped free just as Mason melted the thing into bubbling slag. She sat up, coughing blood, and spat something black. Guess he found a weak spot. Clara scanned the remains, already feeding data to Prometheus. It was reacting to our EM fields, seeking us out, which means it heard the drone. I looked out over the Bloomfield. It was too quiet now, like the whole planet had taken a breath. They didn't retreat. We carved a road forward. After the crawler ambush, we adjusted our plan. No more blind progress. Every meter of ground we took, we altered. Mason called it bio-denial. Clara called it surgical evolution. I just called it work. Prometheus started rewriting spores on the fly. Clara would identify target clusters, usually the more aggressive nodes. Mason would rig dispersal canisters. Singh would map EM safe zones with drones flying short bursts. Then I'd walk point, cutting a path with thermite-laced foam that killed, sterilized, and prepped for seed bombing. We weren't just pushing forward, we were changing the soil behind us, one gene rewrite at a time. The cutter foam burned in a perfect arc ahead, forming a glowing trench that hissed as the spores recoiled. Behind me, Mason tossed a canister that burst into a blue mist of re-engineered fungus. Clara spores. Our spores. They bloomed fast, like time-lapse flowers, spiraling tendrils that didn't feed or corrode. They acted like white blood cells, surrounding red silence patches and neutralizing them through programmed cell suicide. "This is the future of combat engineering," Clara said, watching the bloom spread. "Live terrain modification." I snorted. Guess that makes us farmers. Reno laughed, her voice gravelly through the suit filters. Damn right. Reaping death and sowing salvation. The terrain changed with every step. Red silence towers shriveled in our wake. The color palette shifted. Crimson and rot replaced by pale blues, whites, and dusty greens. It wasn't perfect. Some of our own spores mutated within hours. When inert or worse, started hybridizing. Clara spent nights reprogramming DNA with fingers so stiff she had to use exo-assisted gloves. We set up a mobile base near a dead bloom crater. Singh called it Camp Mendel. Crude, but defensible. We didn't sleep much. The silence didn't either. But for the first time since the evacuation, we had something resembling a perimeter. And we were still alive. We knew the silence was adaptive, but we underestimated how fast. 3 days into Camp Mendel, it tested us. It came at night, if you could call it night. Cordike's IV's thin atmosphere only dims the sunlight into a burnt amber, but when the spores block out the sky, it might as well be midnight. Clara noticed it first. The gene signatures from our seeded terrain were degrading, not slowly, violently. Our blue-white spores were breaking down, fusing with native DNA in ways we hadn't programmed. "They're not just resisting us," she said. "They're hijacking our work." Then the growlers came. We hadn't seen this variant before. 7-limbed, low to the ground, bone-plated like armored centipedes. They didn't crawl. They galloped. The first one hit the north barrier like a siege ram, punching through our barricade of collapsed bloom spires. The Renner shot it point blank with a magnetic slug, blowing off half its face. It didn't stop. "Second wave," Singh yelled, motioning to the east ridge. Heat signatures poured in, too many to count. I activated the auto turrets. They shredded the first wave, but more kept coming, climbing over their own dead. They moved in sync, like muscle spasms in a dying beast. The sound was a rhythmic clack, 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 like armored claws on hollow glass. Mason triggered the forge's emergency dispersal. He'd built a failsafe, spores designed to detonate cell membranes on contact with certain red silence enzymes. Risky as hell. It could eat our own spores, too. Fire in the wind, he muttered and flipped the switch. The air turned blue. For 30 seconds, everything burned, silently. The creatures screamed with no mouths, convulsing as they collapsed into steaming heaps. The whole ridge shimmered with bioluminescent fallout. And then it was quiet again. Really quiet. We resealed the perimeter, took inventory. Clara stitched Runner back together again. Singh recovered a damaged growler corpse for analysis. They're using old colony DNA, Clara whispered, scanning the remains. From where? I asked. She looked up, pale behind her visor. The dad. It's building itself with us. After the night surge, we couldn't afford to keep reacting. We needed to know what the silence wanted, if it could want. That meant getting under its skin, literally. Singh and I tracked a pattern in the terrain the growlers came from, a repeating curve, spiral-like, almost architectural. Clara confirmed it. Fractal density suggests a root hub, possibly a nerve center, something central's coordinating these waves. So we went in, we followed a dry crevice down past the upper bloom crust. The further we went, the less red there was. Colors shifted to rust and deep violet, like bruised veins under old skin. The walls pulsed faintly with heat. It felt alive, not metaphorically, alive. We reached a chamber. At first we thought it was a cave. Then we saw the glyphs, human glyphs. Scratched into the resin walls, engineered tags, notes, DNA sequences, warnings. Pioneer Crew Alpha, Singh muttered. These were the original terraformers, 32 years ago. Their records were embedded directly into the silence. Clara found a strand of RNA laced with Earth genome markers. They didn't just die here. They were digested, decoded, incorporated. Mason kicked a mound of collapsed resin. It cracked open, revealing a partially mummified human hand, fused into the fungal rootwork. Jesus, it's a memory system. This thing's recording us, learning. And it remembered the first ones. Renner scanned further and found something worse. These weren't just messages. They're experiments. The first team tried to fight the mutations, spliced defenses, built hybrids. They failed. Singh pointed at the wall, where a set of gene keys glowed faintly under Clara's scanner. Or maybe they didn't fail, I said. Maybe they built us a map. We collected everything, samples, data, gene strands. It was the first time the silence gave us more than resistance. It gave us history. And if we could read it right, it might give us a weapon. We dragged what we could back to Camp Mendel. Gene keys, samples, bits of hardware half swallowed by resin. But it was what we couldn't carry that stuck with us. That chamber wasn't a grave. It was a record. Claire and Singh set up the forge to decode the gene sequences from the walls. Essentially, biological data logs. It took hours, maybe days. Time blurred in the dust. I was out patrolling when Clara finally called us in. You need to see this, she said, her voice clipped and dry. Main screen showed what looked like a simulation. No sound, just motion. Figures in old gene colony suits. Terraformers. At first, it was normal. Soil testing, spore culture samples, protein synthesis from local algae analogs. Then the corruption hit. These spore samples turned aggressive. Suits started failing. One of them got infected, slow at first, the skin calcified. Then it grew. Not tumors, structures. Rigid, glass-like plates forming over bone like armor. He didn't die, Clara said. He changed. The feed cut to another log. Internal suit footage. A woman, lead bioengineer Harada, left a message encoded into her own bloodline, her DNA. Clara looked pale, explaining it. She encoded the entire team's research as epigenetic tags inside herself, a living library. Then she let the silence take her. Renner muttered, "Suicide? No, it's donation." Harada's sequence was part of the root hub now. She became a key node in the silence's network. Her consciousness didn't survive, but her knowledge did. Think about it, I said. She didn't run, she converted, left herself behind as instructions. Mason leaned on the forge rail, staring at the simulation looping. So what? We dive into the belly of this thing, whisper some magic gene phrase, and it just stands down? Clara looked up. No, we don't make it stand down, we override it. That night, I stared out past the perimeter. The wind was calm, the silence was listening. Clara named the protocol Harada's Echo. Fitting, it was her DNA we were modifying after all. The idea was simple. On paper, create a gene sequence that the silence recognizes as one of its own, but carries code that reprograms instead of obeys. In practice, it was hell. We had to design a living virus, something that wouldn't just kill the red silence, but convince it to change itself. It had to be subtle, it had to be smart, and most of all, it had to be beautiful, because if it wasn't elegant, it would mutate the moment it touched WoW strain and turn back on us. This is a conversation, Claire kept repeating. We're not screaming at it, we're whispering the right words in the right order. The forge ran hot for 37 hours. Prometheus pulsed with blue heat, venting mist as it printed the first batch of bioscripted viral spores. Singh dubbed it Silver Tongue. I liked the name, had a mythic weight to it. We loaded the dispersal canisters manually. No drones this time. Silver Tongue had to be precise, and we needed eyes on how the silence reacted. I volunteered to carry the first load. We moved at dawn. Clara had mapped a cluster of aggressive bloom towers to the east, tall, twitchy, and hot with growth. I climbed the ridge while Mason covered from below with the cutter. When I reached the crest, I pulled the pin on the dispersal pack and let it hiss into the wind. The mist shimmered silver against the red backdrop. Then, nothing. No screech, no burst. Just quiet. And then the towers shivered. The red hues dulled, not faded, shifted. Their glow dimmed, veins tightening like muscles clenching before sleep. I backed down fast, but they didn't follow. Later that night, we scanned the ridge again. The bloom towers were still there, but different. Less erratic, less hostile. The first yes from the planet. It didn't mean we'd won, but it meant we were speaking the right language. Once Silver Tongue worked on a microscale, Clara wanted to push it planetary. Localized whispers aren't enough, she said, hunched over Prometheus, her eyes red from sleepless hours. We need a scream, a beautiful, gene-coded scream. Enter Project Seedstorm, Mason's idea. A full-spectrum atmospheric dispersal. A cocktail of silver tongue spores, bioamplifiers, and adaptive viral seeds, designed to ride wind currents and embed in every corner of the Red Silence's network. We didn't have satellites, no drones left with range. What we did have was a weather tower, an old terraforming relay half buried on Ridge 9. Probably dead, maybe savable. Singh said he could revive it. We moved fast. The relay was 6 clicks through dense bloom fields. We used a scorched earth advance, foam cutters, pulse grenades, and Clara's latest mods, spore shell rounds that embedded and burst on impact. Every shot rewrote a little more of the terrain. When we reached the tower, it was half consumed. Resin vines coiled through the structure like veins through bone. Mason and I hacked a path inside, while Singh dropped into the pit to wire the core. The silence didn't like it. The bloom field around the tower woke up. We saw movement. Massive shapes under the soil, like something burrowing. Fast. Claire yelled into comms. It's a root node. We're standing on a damn brainstem. Then came the cracks. Loud. Sharp. Organic. Bloom towers splitting open, releasing clouds of crimson mist. The spores were coming for the tower. We bought Sing time. Mason and I laid suppression flow, foam and flame and steel. Renner emptied an entire clip of burst rounds into the ground itself, screaming, "Chew on that, you fungal prick!" Zane reconnected the uplink. Towers online. Seed storms loaded. I slammed the launch. The relay groaned, then roared to life, venting vapor, launching spores skyward in a massive spiral of silver blue mist. Above us, the wind changed color. The seed storm had begun. The seed storm changed everything. The planet didn't just react, it convulsed. Every bloom tower for 50 kilometers around either collapsed or crystallized. The air shimmered with static and spore fall, glittering like snow made of shattered DNA. And beneath it all, the silence began to shift. No longer expanding, no longer swarming. It was coiling inward. We figured we'd bought time. We were wrong. 3 days after the dispersal, Renner collapsed during patrol. Not from infection, from integration. Her vitals spiked, then dropped. Her suit's biomonitors screamed for 10 seconds before flatlining. But when we pulled her helmet off, she was still breathing. Barely. Her skin had gone translucent in patches, veins traced with pale bioluminescent lines like root systems. Clara scanned her and recoiled. She's carrying Silver Tongue. Internally. Mason muttered, Jesus. It crossed over from external dispersal to human biosystems. Clara didn't answer, just stared at Renner and then scanned the rest of us. Singh had it. So did I. All of us. In trace amounts. It's rewriting us, she whispered. Not fast, but steadily. A full horizontal gene transfer. We've been breathing it in since day one. I laughed, short and bitter. Well, that explains the dreams. Clara blinked. You're having them too? They weren't nightmares. Not exactly. More like memories that weren't ours. Alien geographies. Organic blueprints. Patterns repeating behind the eyes. It felt like the planet was whispering now. Not just hearing us, but responding through us. Renner woke up 12 hours later. Stronger than before. Her muscle density had increased. Vision sharper. Her first words. I understand it now. We stood around her silent, not afraid. The war was no longer just between us and the silence. It was inside us now, and we were winning. After Renner came back, everything accelerated. Claire confirmed it first. We're not just infected, she said. We're compatible. Our immune systems didn't reject Silver Tongue. They collaborated with it and become carriers, weapons, pathfinders. So we stopped holding around. We advanced. We called it the Bloom Front. A moving line of terrain rewritten by our presence. Wherever we walked, the native fungus didn't attack. It hesitated, coiled, watched, and then changed. Mason started using his dispersal rig like a painter, laying out patterns across the land that forced the red silence to adapt on our terms. Singh joked it was like war by gardening. We made it 3 clicks into what used to be a hostile zone without firing a shot. Then the planet got clever. We hit a trench, natural or grown, didn't matter, deep, lined with bloom tissue, pulsing like a throat. Clara's scans lit up with warning signs. It's producing antiviral agents. It's defending against Silver Tongue now. Renner stepped forward, visor up, eyes glowing faintly. Let me talk to it. She didn't wait for permission. She walked into the trench. I followed her. Couldn't let her go alone. The air was thick, humid, alive. The trench pulsed in rhythm with our footsteps, as if tracking every breath. Renner knelt, pressed a bare hand to the bloom, and it opened. Not violently, gently, like petals peeling back. Inside, a core of tissue, spongy, translucent, beating. Inject here, she said. Clara hesitated, then passed her a vial of deep blue serum. Silver Tongue's final strain. Renner drove it in. The ground shook, once, then stilled. A low, resonant hum that echoed through the trench walls. The silence wasn't dying. It was changing. And so were we. We followed the resonance. After Renner's injection, the trench system stopped attacking. Not passive, receptive. It was like the planet had recognized something in her. in us. Maybe Harada's code? Maybe something new. The Bloomfields bent away from our advance, parting like tide from stone. At their center, we found it. A spire. Not like the others. This one was alive, breathing. Its outer shell wasn't fungal glass, but hardened muscle fiber and biocarbon latticework, like coral grown around a nervous system. To silence its core, its heart. We stood at its base, the six of us. Though by now we weren't just soldiers, we were something more. Our scans showed internal movement, data pulses, thermal blooms, biological patterning at a complexity that rivaled neural networks. This is it, Clara whispered. This is where it's sinking from. The spire's entrance opened before we could touch it. The inside wasn't like the trenches. It was cathedral-like. Ribbed vaults of living matter veined with light, humming with bioelectric current. A neural storm frozen mid-maction. We descended. At the core chamber, it was waiting. A structure hung in the center, part bloom, part bone, part something else. It pulsed like a heart, but it throbbed in sequences. Morse code, but alive. Clara, I said, tell me we can talk to it. We already are. Renner stepped forward again, no helmet now, eyes glowing steady silver, the chamber's pulse synced with her vitals. I know what it wants, she said. It's not trying to kill us, it's trying to become us. Singh laughed, disbelieving. That's not terrifying at all. But Clara didn't laugh. It wants unity, it just didn't know how to ask. Mason unslung the last bioforge canister. And let's give you an answer. And we did. We rewrote the code inside the heart. We didn't leave the spire that night. Couldn't have, even if we tried. Something happened when we triggered the final rewrite. The world shifted, not just biologically, but structurally. Wind patterns calmed. Radiation levels dipped. The spores in the air stopped glowing, then restarted. Blue instead of red. The planet had exhaled. The red silence didn't die, it converted. Our code, Haraz's, Claraz's, all of it, had been assimilated. The core spire became a seed node, rewriting itself outward in slow, tidal pulses. And so did we. Clara tracked the genome changes daily. Each of us diverged slightly, new strengths, new quirks. Renner's reflexes went inhuman. Mason's eyes adjusted to full spectrum light. Singh stopped sleeping. Clara started dreaming in chemical sequences. And me? I stopped aging. 1 year passed, then 3, then 5. Camp Mendel grew into a research garden, then a sanctuary. The planet healed beneath our boots. We walked the scar zones like living antibodies, sowing blue where there had been red. Our spores didn't just suppress the silence, they guided it, cultivated it. The land learned. We taught it, we became more than crew, we became symbiotes, not mindless, not lost, enhanced. Clara once said, we're not merging with the planet, we're shepherding it. By year 6, the spires bloomed green and gold. Flora, real flora. Earth adjacent, but something new, something better. We stopped wearing full armor. Didn't need it. Our skin adjusted, our lungs adapted. We could walk through spore storms with bare faces and laugh. By year 8, we weren't afraid anymore. By year 9, we weren't alone anymore. Because the beacons we'd left burning across the reformed terrain had finally pinged something. A ship. Inbound. 10 years since the evacuation, the cavalry was coming, and they had no idea what they'd find. They called themselves Vanguard Dawn, a second-wave colonization ship dispatched once Cordice 4 was presumed long dead. By the time they entered orbit, the place wasn't even recognizable. They expected wreckage, dead land, maybe a memorial satellite circling a corpse of a planet. What they saw instead? Forests, blooming valleys, spiry trees pulsing with sky-colored light, clean atmosphere, controlled wind currents, planetary systems stable and thriving. No red silence, no carnage, just life. The land sent a signal to welcome them. Not us, the land. The old spire, now a relay node, pinged their ship with a greeting encoded in light and mycelial protein signatures. Clara called it biosymphonic handshake. When their first scout team touched down, they came in full armor, hazmat, guns up, eyes wide. We met them without suits, no armor, no helmets, just skin tuned to the air and smiles they didn't understand. They froze when they saw us. I stepped forward. I don't know what they expected, some half-melted husk or feral survivors raving about spores. Instead, I looked them dead in the visor and said, "Welcome to Corday 4. The leader hesitated. "We thought you were dead." Mason grinned. "We were. Then we got better." They ran 1,000 scans on us. Couldn't classify what we were anymore. Human adjacent. Genetically stable. Enhanced beyond baseline in ways they couldn't wrap their minds around. Clara sat them down in one of the spire gardens. Gave them soil samples, atmosphere breakdowns, biosphere health stats. Every metric said the same thing. The planet had been reborn, and its immune system wore boots and dark humor. They tried to offer us passage back to Earth, retirement, debrief, decontamination. We said no, because this was home now, not a battlefield, not a tomb, a triumph. And we hadn't just survived it, we won it. They left a monument behind when they finally departed, just outside the original colony site. A slab of polished carbon alloy, engraved in 6 languages. No names, just a message. To those who stayed, who fought, who made the impossible grow. Nice gesture, but unnecessary. The real monument was the world itself. Cordes Por wasn't just alive, it was ours. Every spire, every bloom, every storm that rolled across the Golden Valleys carried our fingerprint, our spores, our will. This wasn't a second Earth. It was something better. The silence never disappeared, it just became something new, a living biosphere with an immune system forged by war, shaped by human minds and hands. But we were the first strain of that evolution. We built cities of hybrid coral and alloy powered by mycelial fusion cores, crops that grew from nutrient-rich spore webs, engineered to self-regulate the atmosphere, no need for greenhouses, no need for oxygen tanks. We had learned to shape the wild, and the wild listened. The 6 of us became something between myth and biology, not gods, not quite, but founders, a new clade of humanity. Physically immortal, maybe not, but we didn't age, not like the newcomers. They came in waves after Vanguard Dawn. Farmers, engineers, families. Some were cautious, some afraid. But the moment they stepped onto Cordice 4 and took their first breath of the sweet blue air, their fear faded. We greeted them as shepherds of the bloom. Clara became the first prime biolog of the Terra Symbiosis Guild. Mason trained a defense force using growth-bound tech that only responded to human DNA. Singh built the first planetary AI core, linked biologically to the Spire network. And me? I kept walking the edge. The front line never disappears. It just moves. And I'll be there, boots in the soil, watching the next storm roll in, spores brushing my arms like welcome ghosts. Because this world didn't beat us, we taught it to rise with us. And when the stars look down, they'll see Cordes 4 glowing in the dark. Human-made, human-forged, booming, eternal, and ours.